Okay, so we continue we just began the book of Judges last Friday, and we got through the first 7 sentences after also reading the introduction from ancient Israel. So we'll continue with verse 8. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shekidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. So we had a foretaste of the violence that we're going to see in this book with this capture and dismemberment of the king Adoni Bezek, cutting off his thumbs and big toes. Okay, and he died in captivity. So now we're on verse 8 on page 158. Vayilachamu v'nei Yehuda b'Yerushalayim. I just want to see for a second how many. We'll see if we can get through the rest of the chapter today. It's 36 sentences. Vayilachamu b'nei Yehuda b'Yerushalayim vayilkedu ota. Vayakuha lefi charev, ve'ata'ir shilchu va'esh. So they, the children of Judah, or the members of the tribe of Judah, fought against Jerusalem, and they captured it and defeated it by the sword. Just a second. Defeated it by the sword. And the city they set on fire. Va'achar yardu v'nei Yehuda lehilachem b'Kanaani yoshev ahar v'hanegev v'hashvela. So we're on verse 9 of chapter 1 of the book of Judges. We're on page 158. And afterwards, so they set Jerusalem on fire. They captured it, set it on fire, and then they went. The people of Judah went down to fight against the Canaanites who are in the hill country there, and in the Negev, and in the coastal plain. So it says here the lowland, but I think the Shfela is technically the coastal plain. So if you kind of can picture the geography of Israel, if you kind of remember. If you went from the airport directly to Jerusalem, so this is the opposite. So you're in the coastal plain where Ben Gurion Airport is. Then you get into the hills, the Judean hills, until you and you keep going up until you get to Jerusalem. Okay, south of that main road that connects the airport to Jerusalem. A bit south of that would be the Negev, but like I said, a bit south, let's say an hour's drive. But that whole area between the Mediterranean Sea, the coast, and the hill country, that's called the coastal plain, and in Hebrew it's called Shephelah. So it's low down. So that's the name. Okay. Vayelech, verse 10, Vayelech Yehuda El HaKenani Hayoshev BeChevron, V'Shem Chevron Lefanim Kiryat Arba, V'Yaku et Sheshai V'Achiman V'et Talmai. So then Judah went against the Canaanites dwelling in Chevron, and the name of Chevron before was Kiryat Arba. And they smote or defeated Sheshai, Achiman, and Talmai. So we know those names from the book of Joshua, also when they tried fighting against Chevron. Okay, so this is the exploits of Judah after Joshua died and what they're doing. The battles that they had, defeating Jerusalem. Now, this is news to me. I did read the book of Joshua once before in my life in rabbinical school. So I can't say that I should be surprised, but the classic conquest of Jerusalem is by King David that's written in the second book of Samuel. So, and he conquered it from the Jebusites. So, King David was king in Hebron for 7 years, and then established the capital and his palace in Jerusalem for 33 more years of his reign. So, what happened? So here Judah conquers Jerusalem and set it on fire. So, did they just abandon it? Or did they rebuild it? Or did they let the Jebusites get hold of it again? So we'll see, just to keep that in mind. I mean, Jerusalem's important, and it takes a central place in Israelite history. So the fact that it's here is important to keep in mind. Okay, so then they went on to Hebron, and they defeated Sheshai, Achiman, and Talmai. Verse 11, 159, Vayelech Misham El Yoshvei Devir, V'Shem Devir Lefanim Kiryat Sefer. So from Hebron, they went on to the inhabitants of Devir, and Devir before was called Kiryat Sefer. Vayomer Kalev, Asher Yakeh et Kiryat Sefer, U Lechada, Venatati lo et achsa viti leisha. And Caleb said, now where's Caleb coming all of a sudden? He's just making an appearance. Caleb is the head of the tribe of Judah, one of two people, he and Joshua, who stayed alive during the wandering in the desert for 40 years. So he's an old man. And so he's saying, just all of a sudden, where I don't know why he's appearing all of a sudden here, but okay, we'll look at the commentary soon. Caleb said, whoever defeats or smites Kiryat Sefer and captures it, I'll give him Achsa, my daughter, as a wife, for a wife. Vayilkeda Otniel ben Kenaz, Achi Kalev, Hakaton, Mimenu, Vayitein lo et Achsavito leisha. So Otniel, the son of Kenaz, the brother of Caleb, the younger brother of Caleb. So, in other words, then, Otniel is Caleb's nephew. Right? So Otniel, son of Kenaz, Kenaz is the brother of Caleb. So Otniel is his nephew, and he gave him Achsa, his daughter, for his wife. So two cousins marrying, nothing wrong with that. We got Jacob marries his cousins, Isaac married his cousin. So there's nothing wrong with cousins marrying. First cousins, no problem.
Am I remembering correctly that Caleb was one of the spies that was on Joshua's side,
Yes.
effectively?
Yeah, Joshua and Caleb among the 12 spies that went in to scout out the land too. Yes. Okay, 14.
He's clearly, he's got some gravitas. He not only by his age, but by.
Yeah, that's what I said, that he's the only one left alive now. Joshua's dead from the time of wandering in the desert. Okay. Vayehi bevoah vatesitehu let lishol me'et aviha hasadeh vatitznach me'ala chamor vayomer la kalev malach. So when she came to him, she moved him to ask from her father a field. And she got off of her donkey, and Caleb says, "What's up?" Well, it's what wouldest thou? No, what's up? And Vatomer lo, hava li bracha, ki eretz hanegev netatani, va V'natata li gulot mayim, vayiten la kalev et gulot ilit, ve'et gulot tachtit. So she says to him, please give me a blessing, the land of the Negev, because you have put me or given me some land in the Negev. Give me a spring of water. And Caleb gave her Gulot Elite and Gulot Tachtit, that is the upper springs and the nether springs. Okay, let's stop here and let's look at the commentary on this section. It's kind of cryptic here, this whole episode with Caleb and his daughter and his nephew who becomes his son-in-law. So back on 158, the commentary there beginning with verse 8, fought against Jerusalem and took it. The apparent contradiction between this statement and what is implied in verse 21, we haven't gotten there yet, may be reconciled by supposing that the Judahites captured and destroyed the lower city, but were unable to conquer the citadel. Subsequently, the lower city was rebuilt and inhabited by the men of Judah and Benjamin, as well as by Jebusites who, holding the citadel, were masters of the city until the time of David. Okay, so we'll see later in the chapter this idea that they really only had part of Jerusalem, not all of it. Another explanation is after taking the city and burning it, the Judahites did not occupy the site. The Jebusites soon rebuilt and fortified it so strongly that neither Benjamin, in whose territory it lay, nor Judah, whose border it threatened, was able to retake it. Members of these tribes settled in the city as aliens until the reign of David, when the Jebusites were finally driven out. Okay, so that's the commentary's explanation for what we're going to see about what happens to Jerusalem. Edge, that is mouth, that is the sharp edge of the sword. Set on fire, literally sent away in fire. Perhaps the phrase originated in the idea of getting rid of by fire. Went down, apparently having reached the highest part of the Judean highlands, the invading army poured down into the remaining hill country and thence into the Negev in the south and the lowland along the Mediterranean coast, so overrunning the whole of what became the land of Judah. The hill country, the mountainous backbone of southern Palestine, whose highest elevation is near Hebron, where the land rises to a height of nearly 3,000 feet. The south, Hebrew Negev, the steppe, which forms the transition to the true desert. Being the southernmost natural division of the country, the name acquired the meaning south, as Yam, sea, came to denote west. The root is extinct in biblical Hebrew, but in Aramaic and Syriac, it means dry. The lowland, the coastal plain, including the foothills of Judea, stretching from Jaffa to Gaza. Its fertility made it a great contrast to the austere and forbidding dry land of the Negev. Okay, and Judah went. We are to understand by this that a detachment of Judean warriors, headed by Caleb, turned south to the conquest of Hebron and the surrounding territory. Hebron, this ancient and historic city, is situated 22 Roman miles south of Jerusalem in the highest part of the mountains of Judah, 2,000 feet above sea level. The town lies in a valley which runs from northwest to southeast. The modern city is built partly at the bottom and partly on the slope of the eastern hill. The fields and the surrounding villages belonged to Caleb by divine bestowal. From see Numbers 14 and Joshua 15. Okay, Kiryat Arba, see Genesis 23, 25. As mentioned in Joshua 14 and 15, Arba was the name of the father of the giants who lived in that city, namely Achiman, Sheshai, and Talmai. Hence, the city was apparently called Kiryat Arba on his name, that is the city of Arba. It is therefore indeed puzzling that the rabbis interpret Kiryat Arba as the city of the four, that is, the four giants who live there, the four righteous men, Abraham, Avner, Eshcol, and Mamre, or the four couples buried there, Adam and Eve, Abraham and Sarah, Isaac and Rebekah, and Jacob and Leah. Expositors therefore conclude that the city was originally called Arba for the reasons given by the rabbis. The giant Arba was named after the city. They arrived at that conclusion since they could find no reason for calling a person Arba. Okay, there are some unusual names in the Bible, but Arba means four. And so for the rabbis, city, it's the city of four. I don't know, it's like the Twin Cities, Minneapolis and St. Paul, right? Just a sec. Okay. I just saw your chat message, Bess, based on our conversation earlier. Okay, that's interesting about the Jewish population of SMU. Okay, so for the rabbis, Arba means four, and it should always have meant four, and that it's not, how can a person have the name four? But, people name their children unusual names, right? Doesn't Gwyneth Paltrow have a daughter named Apple? So anyway, it's people do unusual things with names for their children. So anyway, for the rabbi, it's rabbinic tradition that is most important, and that it must be either called Kiryat Arba for Abraham, Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre, or for the four couples buried there, and the idea that Adam and Eve are buried there. That's totally made up, but that is a tradition. I've been inside that place, that the tomb of the patriarchs and matriarchs, and there's an opening there that with a plaque that says, "Here's Adam and Eve." So doesn't mean that it's true, but it's that's the tradition, an ancient tradition. That's been there for a long time. Sorry, my son is FaceTiming me and did not know that I'm in a class. It's okay. So anyway, so that's the different traditions about Kiryat Arba. Let me just text him to say what's up.
Not what's up. What is thou, right? Isn't that what you said?
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so that's all of that on Kiryat Arba. All right, so we go on. For the episode, verse 11, for the episode, see Joshua 15. About what happened with Devere. From thence he went. The subject is Judah and refers to the detachment under Caleb, which had set itself the conquest of the south. Devere, a place of strategical importance in the Negev. See verse 15, or on the verge of the hill country, see Joshua 11. It has been equated with the modern village of Dahariya, 4 or 5 hours southwest of Hebron, standing in a conspicuous position on a flat ridge at a point where the roads meet from Gaza, Beersheba, and other places south and east. Okay. Kiryat Sefer, see Joshua 15. 12, for a similar incentive, like whoever can conquer this city, I'll give them my daughter, see 1 Samuel 17. My daughter, from the sequel, it appears that the victor also received the captured city as a possession. Caleb's younger brother. Grammatically, this may refer either to Kenaz or Othniel. Rashi quotes the view that Caleb was Othniel's brother from the same mother. See also in Joshua 14:6. So it's the Hebrew is cryptic, not knowing which one is the younger brother. Is it Othniel who's his brother, or is it Kenaz who's his brother? Okay. When she came, the ambiguity is removed, either by assuming she had been summoned from a place of safety, perhaps Hebron, where she had been left during the campaign against Devere, or that the incident happened as she was going from her father's house, where the marriage had taken place, to her husband's new home, escorted on the way by her father. Another explanation is given in the note on Joshua 15. Okay, so in other words, how it came about that they got this, the upper springs and the lower springs. To ask, that is, Achsa persuaded her husband to permit her to ask her father for the field. Alternatively, she persuaded him to ask her father for the field. After he had given her the field, she personally asked him for the upper springs and the nether springs. Others explain that she coaxed her husband to ask her father. When he hesitated, she took the initiative and asked him herself. Alighted, as a mark of respect. The root is elsewhere used of something sinking to the ground. So the word titznach. So tsadi nun chet. In modern Hebrew, it's a parachuter. A tzanchan is a parachutist. So titznach, to get off the donkey. So if you're jumping off and landing softly, in modern Hebrew, the Hebrew Academy said, okay, how are we going to invent a word for someone who uses a parachute? Oh, let's take this biblical word, jumping off a donkey, and use that for the modern Hebrew. So that's Tzanchan or Tzanchanit, and are parachutists. They're among the elite in the armed forces today. Perhaps the word should be rendered, she sank down to the ground in the posture of a suppliant. The modern East provides examples of the practice referred to. Okay. What wouldest thou? The Hebrew expresses a sense of anxiety, such as would be conveyed in English by what ails you? So in other words, I translated it, what's up? It's more than that. Is everything okay? A blessing. The Hebrew noun also denotes a present. Southland, the land of the Negev. Springs of water. The text is difficult. According to Rashi, the reference is to ground sufficiently watered by rain. Curious are the variants found in the parallel version in Joshua 15, where the plural iliot and tachtiot occurs. Kimchi explains, it's one of the medieval commentators, that the plural refers to gulot, whereas the singular refers to the land in which the wells were situated. The springs have been tentatively identified with the Sel Ed Dilbe on the road from Hebron to Dahariya, where lies one of the best watered valleys in southern Eretz Yisrael. When Caleb heard his daughter's reasonable request, he gave her a fertile field watered constantly by 2 springs in order to enable Othniel to engage in his studies without the concern of earning a livelihood. Okay, so for the Midrash, these judges, the first military person being Othniel, well, of course, they studied Torah. So there's no reference, of course, to it in the Bible itself, but for the rabbis, that must be the case. Even these judges are righteous figures, and they had to have the time to study Torah. Okay, so let's look at ancient Israel. We're on page 112 in that book, and see actually the commentary begins for our section. It's just a couple of things on page 113. Whoever strikes Kiryat Sefer and takes it, to him I shall give Achsa, my daughter, as wife. The story here, including the 2 previous verses, repeats in virtually identical language the story told in Joshua 15, verses 13 to 19. The offer of the hand of the daughter to the victorious hero is an obvious folkloric motif and recurs in the episode of David and Goliath. Othniel, he's to become the first judge. Desert land, the term Negev, rendered elsewhere in this translation as the place name Negev, means terrain that supports little or no vegetation, probably deriving from a verbal stem that means dry or desolate. The region in the southern part of the land of Israel is that sort of terrain, and hence is given the geographical name Negev. Another term, midbar, is represented in this version, as it is in most English translations, as wilderness, because it includes land in which animals can graze. So semi-arid, semi-dry, semi-barren, whatever. Okay, so now we go on. Let's keep on reading the text. We're on page 161, beginning with verse 16. Uvenei Keni, Chotein Moshe, Alu Meir Hatimarim, et Bnei Yehuda, Midbar Yehuda, Asher Benegev Arad, Vayelech Vayeshev et Ha'am. And the children of Keni, who was Moses's father-in-law, went up out of the city of palm trees against, so it says et, so I would think that means against, but it means with the people of Judah into the desert or the wilderness of Judah, which is in the Negev around Arad, and they dwelt together there.
Jonah?
So, yes.
Maybe it's going to say something. I thought Jethro was a Midianite. Who's it? What's a Kenite?
So there are several different references to him in the Torah. The first time we meet him is in Exodus, and described as he's the priest of Midian. But then in other places in the Torah, he's referred to as Chovav. He's also referred to as Reuel. So there's three different names. And then the descendants are also called by different names. So if we Alter totally ignores this reference in his commentary, doesn't say anything about it. And we'll look at the commentary here in a little bit to see what they help us understand. So anyway, so says that the Kenite it's one of 7 names that Jethro is known by. So Jethro, Reuel, Chovav, and then there are other names too. So, okay, 17. Vayelech Yehuda et Shimon achiv, vayaku et Kenani yoshev tzefat, vayacharimu oto, vayikra et shem ha'ir Chorma. So then Judah went with Shimon his brother, and they defeated the Canaanites in Safat, and they annihilated them, and they called the city Chorma. After the fact, like Chorma Chet Resh Mem from Cherem, so totally destroying it, so they called it Chorma. Vayilkod Yehuda et Azah ve'et Gevula ve'et Ashkelon ve'et Gevula ve'et Ekron ve'et Gevula. So then they also took, Judah also took Azah and its boundaries, about bordering settlements. They took Ashkelon and its bordered settlements, and Ekron and its bordered settlements. Vayehi Adonai et Yehuda, vayoresh et Ahar, ki lo lahorish et yoshvei ha'emek, ki rechev barzel lahem. So God was with Judah, and they were able to take the hill country, they drove out the people in the hill country. They were not able to drive out the people of the valley, because they had metal or iron chariots.
They took Gaza. Were they Canaanites?
It doesn't say.
Okay. Just thought I didn't.
I don't know. Don't know. Doesn't say who they were. Just says that they took the city. Vayitnu lechalev et Chevron ka'asher diber Moshe, vayoresh misham et shlosha b'nei ha'anak. And they gave to Caleb Hebron as Moses commanded or spoke. And they drove out from there the 3 sons of the giant, that is Sheshai, Talmai, and Achiman. Ve'et hayevusi Yoshev Yerushalayim lo horishu b'nei Binyamin, vayeshev hayevusi et b'nei Binyamin b'Yerushalayim ad hayom hazeh. And the Jebusites living in Jerusalem, the people of Benjamin were not able to drive out, and the Jebusites lived with the people of Benjamin in Jerusalem until this day. So until this day means until the time of King David, when King David drove them out. So there's possibly a hint as to when the book of Judges was written. Okay, so let's stop there and look at the commentary on this section. So from 16 to 21. So here on 161, the Kenite, the Hebrew omits the definite article as if Keni were a proper name. It is in fact one of the 7 names by which, according to the rabbis, Jethro was known. Father-in-law, the term chotain is used of the woman's father, as distinct from cham, which denotes the man's father. In the Mishnah, however, we find the latter term used for both. The city of palm trees, so again in chapter 3, Deuteronomy 34, 2 Chronicles 28. Geographers agree that the description amply applies to the cultivated area below the spring eastward of the deserted mound. According to rabbinic tradition, the city was assigned to the descendants of Jethro until the time the temple was erected, when it became the possession of the tribe in whose territory it would be built. The children of Jethro thus enjoyed its ownership for 440 years. The reference in the verse is said to be to the students among them who left their homes and went to study at the feet of Othniel. Again, maintaining the rabbinic midrashic tradition that Othniel, not only as a judge would be a righteous person studying Torah, but he would have had his own rabbinical academy and would have had a bunch of students studying with him. Arad, generally identified with Tel Arad, a round, detached, not very prominent, but well-defined hill about 16 miles south of Hebron. It stands among extensive ruins. Archaeology reveals that Arad was desolate at the time of the conquest. Ruins of a Canaanite city destroyed in the 3rd millennium before the Common Era were discovered along with the ruins of an Israelite fortress built at the beginning of the Commonwealth. Hence, at the time of the conquest, it was desolate. Consequently, the Kenites pitched their tents wherever they wished. This site is not identical with the Arad mentioned in Numbers 21, which was further south within the desert. Shishak, king of Egypt, lists 2 places among his conquests, one named Arad Rabat and one named Arad Bet Yerocham. Our Arad is probably Arad Rabat, and the one in Numbers is probably Arad Beit Yerocham. They went, literally he went, explained by Kimchi as the head of the clan with his followers. The subject may be singular with a collective meaning. With the people, that is, with the Israelites of the tribe of Judah. In fulfillment of the agreement made at the beginning of the campaign, the allies then invaded the territory assigned to Shimon in the south of Judah. Sifat, not the modern Safed in Galilee, but a place in the Negev identified by some authorities with the modern Sebeta, by others with Es Sufa or El Melch, and by still others with Tel Abu Huraira. Utterly destroyed, the act of extermination was in accordance with the command given by Moses and was practiced by all warring peoples both before and after this period. The neglect of the command was subsequently considered to be the cause of Israel's sufferings in the struggle for independence, right? The idea was we're supposed to totally destroy the inhabitants, annihilate and destroy the cities in the land of Israel. That was the command from the Torah. All right, we continue 18. These two verses do not, as some modern scholars suppose, contradict one another. Verse 18 tells that the great cities of the plain were conquered, while verse 19, besides implying that the hill country was also taken, adds the information that it was cleared of its inhabitants, but not so the plain. An alternative explanation is that after defeat, the people of the plain recaptured their land. The places named were the principal cities of Philistia, south of Jaffa. He could not, literally, it was not to. That is, it was not possible to. Drive out. The verb horish cannot always be translated by the same English word and must be understood from the context. It can mean conquer, occupy, possess, and dispossess. The inhabitants of the valley, they were left in possession as a test for Israel. The region indicated is the coastal plain west of Judah, in which the cities enumerated in verse 18 stood. Amek denotes deep depression and describes not a ravine, but a broad valley, such as the plain of Jezreel, which is now called the Amek par excellence. Chariots of iron. This is not the reason that the inhabitants could not be driven out, because iron chariots would not constitute an insurmountable obstacle when the Lord was with Judah. The Targum, the Aramaic translation, explains that the Israelites, after their victories, had lapsed into sin and so forfeited the divine favor. The chariots of iron were not made of that material, but the metal served as a strengthening element or as studs in what was otherwise a wooden construction. Caleb expels the giants of Hebron. As Moses had spoken, the promise of Moses was in general terms, see Numbers 14, but understood to mean Hebron. Joshua therefore acceded to Caleb's request for that city. The three sons, see verse 10. Anak, the word means neck in the Semitic languages. It often occurs as a proper noun, but it has been rightly pointed out that the article is unusual with a personal name, and the suggestion is that the phrase sons of the Anak means that the son appears to be a necklace around their necks. Okay. And 21, the children of Benjamin did not drive out. In Joshua 15, the statement is made that the children of Judah could not drive them out. Jerusalem was in the territories of both tribes. Jerusalem, according to the Amarna letters, almost contemporary with this period, Jerusalem under its king Abdi Hippa remained loyal to the Egyptian overlord Akhenaton, although the rest of the country was falling away before the onslaught of the Habiru. This testimony explains why the city resisted conquest for a considerable time. All right, so we can look up on your own the idea of the Amarna letters and the history recorded there, and a people known as the Habiru, and were the Habiru the Hebrews. All right, so some biblical scholars think that there's that connection. Unto this day, that is until the time of this writing by Samuel. So the medieval commentators think that the prophet Samuel wrote the book of Judges. Okay, so let's look at ancient Israel on this. The town, so on 113, the town of Palms, on the basis of other biblical occurrences, this is Jericho. Chormah, the name puns on Cherem, ban. 114, and Judah took Gaza and its territory. This verse is another instance in which the writer's location in a time when the Philistine coastal enclave had long been subdued is retrojected to the period of the Judges. Here, 3 of the 5 towns of the Philistine Pentapolis are said to be conquered by Judah. But in the subsequent narrative, down to the time of David, the Philistines remain autonomous and a potent military threat. And in Judges itself, in the Samson story, Gaza is very much in the hands of the Philistines. Was not able, the Hebrew of the received text sounds odd at this point. Was not able occurs in Onkelos's Aramaic version. The three sons of the giant, though many interpreters prefer to understand the last term here, Anak, as a proper noun, it does not mean giant. And there is a clear tradition reflected in Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua, and Judges that some of the indigenous inhabitants of the land were giants. Okay, let's read a few more verses. Back to page 163 in our text. Vaya'alu Veit Yosef, Gam Haim, Beit El, Va'adonai Imam. And so the house of Joseph went up, they too, to Beth El, and God was with them. Vayatiru Beit Yosef beVeit El, V'Shem Ha'ir Lefanim Luz. And so the house of Joseph went to spy out the town of Beit El, and then parenthetically, the name of the city before was called Luz. Vayiru Hashomrim Ish Yotzei Min Ha'ir, Vayomru Lo Har'enu Na et Mevo Ha'ir, Va'asinu Imcha Chased. So the watchers saw that's these spies that went out, saw a man coming from the city, and they said to him, show us the entrance to the city, and we'll deal kindly with you. That is, we won't kill you. Vayar'em et mevo ha'ir, vayaku et ha'ir lefi charev, v'et ha'ish v'ekol mishpachto shilechu. So he showed them the entrance to the city, and they smote the city by sword, and the man and all his family they let go. Vayelech ha'ish eretz hachitim, vayiven ir, vayikra shemo Luz, hu shema ad hayom hazeh. And the man went to the land of the Hittites and built a city and called it Luz, and that's its name until today. All right, so that's the new Luz from the lone inhabitant, non-Jewish inhabitant, non-Israelite inhabitant of the city of Bethel, that he then reestablishes. Okay, let's look at the commentary on these sentences. 22. House of Joseph, the tribes of Ephraim and Manasseh, also went up as Judah had done. Beit El, the modern Beitin, at the head of the ravine, which runs among the mountains from Jericho to Ai, barely 2 miles west of the latter. Excavations have revealed the remains of a stout defensive wall and a layer of destruction dating about this period. Sent to spy out, this rendering construes Vayatiru as the Hiphil conjugation. Okay, that doesn't matter, it's just a grammatical formulation of the word. The meaning given to the form by some commentator is they caused an examination to be made to find out the best way of surprising the town. The verb can either be a direct causative, they caused men to spy out, or a form of another form of the verb, on the analogy of vayalinu for vayalunu. Okay, so just the form of the verb makes it difficult to translate to find out exactly what happened. Luz, see Joshua 16. The watchers, the Israelite scouts or pickets, show us if they saw him coming out of the city, they would surely see whence he came. See the next note. The entrance, not the gate, which would be obvious and heavily guarded, but a secret entrance. The Hebrew might be rendered the way to enter, and they inquired about a path along which an unexpected assault could be made. He showed them, he indicated the direction by means of a gesture. With the edge, literally to the mouth. The sharp edge of the sword is referred to as the mouth. See below, chapter 3. All his family, for the practice of benefiting the whole family, see Joshua 2. Family is employed in the wider sense of all his kindred. The man went, he migrated beyond the reach of his townsmen and settled for safety in a foreign land. Perhaps he left Canaan because he did not wish to accept the 7 Noahide commandments. Okay. The land of the Hittites, if the reference is to the 10 powerful king, if the then powerful kingdom of Hatti in Asia Minor, the man traveled a considerable distance. The Hittites of this verse are, of course, not the people who are reckoned among the 7 nations of Canaan. About this time, 1400 BCE, the Hittite Empire was on the eve of a great expansion under Subiliu, who overran Mesopotamia and wrested from Egypt the suzerainty of Syria. He rivaled the greatness of the Assyrian kings. Built a city. This explains how a city by the name of Luz should have existed in the days of the judges so far away from Canaan. As a reward for supporting the Israelites, he eventually built a city. Luz. There is no clue to the site beyond the statement that it was in the land of the Hittites. The Talmud describes it as a place where the blue dye was made for the fringes, which Sennacherib did not disturb or Nebuchadnezzar destroy. Even the angel of death had no power over it, and old people, when tired of life, would go outside the city to die. Lots of midrashim then about that new city of Luz and the supernatural power that it had. Okay, let's look at ancient Israel. Bethel. The report now moves to the north. Bethel was to become a central cultic location in the northern kingdom of Israel after the split in the monarchy. The way into the town. Yigal Yadin, one of the first preeminent archaeologists of Israel, has cited archaeological evidence that some Canaanite towns had tunnels that provided secret access to them. That sounds plausible here because the lookouts are surely not asking directions to the main gate of the town. And that's it on this section from ancient Israel. Let's read a couple more verses. 27, V'lo horish Menashe et Beit She'an, v'et benoteha, v'et Ta'anach, v'et benoteha, v'et Yoshvei Dor, v'et benoteha, v'et Yoshvei Yivla'am, v'et benoteha, v'et Yoshvei Megiddo, v'et benoteha, v'yoel ha'Kanaani lashevet ba'aretz hazot. So the Menashe was not able to drive out the inhabitants of Beit She'an and its towns, or Ta'anach and its towns, or Dor and its towns, or Yivla'am and its towns, and Megiddo and its towns. But the Canaanites were resolved to dwell in that land. So they stayed there. Whatever Menashe tried to do, they could not defeat the Canaanites there. Vayehi ki chazak Yisrael vayasem et ha'Kanaani lamas v'horesh lahorishu. They were strong enough to tax the Canaanites, but they could not drive them out. Okay.
It's somewhat interesting. I'm following along the Asimov Guide to the Bible while we do this, and he suggests that the reason that they couldn't wipe out the Canaanite, different various sections of them, was because Joshua and the judges were coming in under the Bronze Age, and they were facing enemies who were entering the Iron Age.
Oh, okay.
The chariots as well.
Could be.
Just
yeah.
Could be.
All right, so let's verse 29. Ve'Ephraim lo horish et ha'Kanaani hayoshev begazer, vayeshev ha'Kanaani bekirbo begazer. And Ephraim could not drive out the Canaanites in Gezer, and the Canaanites stayed among the Ephraimites in Gezer. Zevulun lo horish et yoshvei Kitron, ve'et yoshvei Nahalol, vayeshev ha'Kanaani bekirbo vayu lamas. The Zebulunites could not drive out the people of Kitron or the inhabitants of Nahalol. The Canaanites stayed among them, but they also taxed them, or it also says that they put them to task work. They were able to subjugate them.
you're translating that as could not, but the text here says drove not, did not, like it could have been a choice. Are you, is that
So
the way
I
you're,
think it's understood to be they tried to drive them out, but they couldn't do it. As opposed, the verse itself, literally, it means they did not drive them out. But I mean, I think it's because they tried and they couldn't do it. Okay, let's look at the commentary on this, bottom of 164. The inactivity of the other tribes. The statement corresponds to Joshua 17. The house of Joseph was separated from the other tribes, both on the north and south, by a line of Canaanite towns. It was thus cut off from the fertile plain and from the tribes which struggled for a foothold in Galilee by a chain of fortified cities guarding the passes. At the eastern end was Beit Sha'an on the main road to Damascus. At the western extremity was Megiddo on the road from Mediterranean coast, commanding the commercial and military route between Egypt and the east. For the cities enumerated, see Joshua Adlok. When Israel was waxen strong, this was after the defeat of Yavin and Sisera in chapter 4. Task work, as below in chapter 4. So God subdued on that day Yavin, the king of Canaan, before the children of Israel. They impressed the Canaanites in the working gangs, which were employed in the east on public work. See 1 Kings 4. Did in no wise drive them out. The population remained largely Canaanite, and Beit Sha'an in later times was more foreign than Israelite. Although Israel had waxen strong, was able to aid Manasseh in driving out the Canaanites, the tribe of Manasseh was content in putting them to task work and was not interested in driving them out. Okay, so the commentary here said they didn't even try, but they were fine with just putting them to work. Dwelt in Gezer, the Canaanites here formed an enclave in the territory of Ephraim on the southwestern border. Okay, the northern tribes now. So we read through 30. So the achievements of the northern tribes were less spectacular and of minor importance as compared with those of Judah and Joseph. The Israelites were settled among the older population, which for many centuries remained predominantly heathen. A noteworthy omission is mention of Issachar. Perhaps the tribe of Issachar did indeed comply with the commandment to drive out the Canaanites in their territory. All right, we're going to see. As Zebulun, this tribe settled in the hilly country of Lower Galilee, north of the Great Plain towards the west. Kitron, mentioned only here, traditionally identified with Sephoris, or in Hebrew would be Tzipori. And Nahalol, see on Joshua 19. Okay, so let's read. The only thing in ancient Israel is this comment to verse 28. Israel put the Canaanite to forced labor, but it did not dispossess him. Whether this subjugation of the Canaanite population to the Israelites was a historical fact or is merely a face-saving formula for the failure of the conquest is uncertain. In any case, the chapter from this point on spells out a theme of incompletion that had fluctuated through the book of Joshua. In the first half of Joshua, the conquest of the land appears to be comprehensive. In the second half, there are some indications that much remains to be conquered. Now we have a whole catalog of failed conquests, all attributed to the northern tribes that would constitute the breakaway kingdom of Israel, and who also end up being exiled to Assyria and never heard from again. All right, let's stop here for today. And no class next Friday. I'll be away on vacation. We'll have class the following Friday, which will be the first Friday after the new year. So have a good rest of the day. Shabbat Shalom, everyone, and a happy new year.
Shabbos.
Yeah. Shabbat Shalom. Thank you,
Shabbat
Jonah.
Shalom.
Take care.
Bye.